So this is the final session, and I think, first of all, could I ask you all, thank you very much for staying. I'm a bit sensitive as I get older about the size of the audience that I have, particularly when I talk towards the end of the day, because I had an experience recently. I had to give a talk at 5 o'clock on a Friday. And, you know, who volunteers to give a talk at 5 o'clock on Friday? But, you know, they'd asked 3 years before, and, you know, it came up. So, you know, it was in the winter. It was a hospital away in the distance. I thought, do I really want to do this? I said, no, I'm a professional. I'm going to give this talk. There are people interested in dementia. I'm going to give this talk. So it got to, I was about to leave 2 o'clock, and it was beginning to get dark, and I could see the clouds gathering. I said, surely I'm not going to, surely I could just, you know, I'll send apologies. I said, no, I'm a professional. People have come to hear me. I'm going to give this talk. So I left, and it was beginning to snow. I thought, oh, goodness, I'm going to get caught overnight. I thought I could come up with the excuses. And being of a certain age, I can always get chest pain very easily or anything like that and come up with an excuse. I said, no, I'm going to do it. Eventually, I arrived at the hospital. The snow was thick on the ground. I thought, oh, God. I said, I'm going to get trapped here. Surely I can just leave. I said, no, I'm a professional. I'm going to give this talk. Eventually, I found the room. No one knew where it was. I have a huge room. There was one person in the audience. So I thought, oh, maybe I should just go. I said, no, I'm going to give this talk. So I gave my talk, and I was about to leave, and the person said, where are you going? I'm the second speaker. So we've had a fantastic day, and it's been I think, very successful. And we'll say it at the end as well, but perhaps you could join me in thanking the organizer. James, I know you've done a huge amount of work with colleagues. John at the NIHR and colleagues at ESRC, so thanks. It's been a great, successful day. I think for me, there's just 3 quick reflections, and then what I thought we'd do, it's getting late, and just in terms of time, I've got an idea of what we might do in a minute. I think for me, the issue is we've really seen an extraordinarily broad approach to the issue of dementia care research, from data to meeting centres, and I've really been overwhelmed by the breadth and the depth of the interest and the curiosity that there is. So when Louise and I kind of thought about what were the kind of things that we would do, I think it's fantastic to see that breadth. It's also great to see that people from other areas, and there's been 1 or 2 examples we've heard. And going back to the Prime Minister's challenge, Lise, that you mentioned, one of the aspirations around dementia research was to bring in people who did not see dementia as their core business. And I think we've seen now great examples of that. And that's in line with the NHS long-term plan and, if you like, the next phase of the story of dementia, broadening the story of dementia into other things as well. I think for the NHS, I'm minded that probably 90% of the experience of someone with dementia and their families is outside the NHS. And I think crossing health and social care is clear. And Martin, you mentioned earlier about the great increase in research in social care, which I think is important. One of the things that we considered as well is that should we have a kind of existential home for care research? And it reminded me when the President of the United States would say, if I want to speak to Europe, who should I phone? And having sort of one centre was an idea that we had, and perhaps we could come to that in a minute. But I think also a reflection is the international perspective. We've heard a little about the international perspective with colleagues joining from the States. But I think what today has certainly shown me is that, as with other things, and people often say this in terms of research, the UK punches above its weight in terms of some of the things that we're doing. So I don't want to delay things unnecessarily, but there is a specific question that I think was here, which was, if there was one thing that we wanted to say or do or create or promote that would make the most significant progress over the next 10 years in dementia care research, what would it be? And what I might do, if I may, if I could ask each table just for 5 minutes, just among you, come up with one thing that you think as a consensus. Now, people that are very clever said, well, we've got one thing, but there's 3 parts to it. You're not allowed to do that. So you're not allowed to have 1 A, B, and C. But what's the one thing that you think would help to transfer care? You're not allowed to say more money, because that'll be part of it, so don't worry about that. And you're not allowed to say another meeting, because although, James, I know that you're moving on, but I'm sure that there will be a suggestion that we meet again, and I think people have said that. So if you could, just for the next 5 minutes, if you may, just come up with the one thing, and then we'll go around each table. And so if you pick a volunteer who's going to stand up and shout what the one thing is, and we'll come back in 5 minutes. There's always someone, isn't there, that doesn't understand the question. So I'll read it out. Session aim. This open session will invite discussion of what is needed to make significant progress in dementia care research over the next decade. Is that all right, Deborah?
Yes, thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. So does everyone understand the question? Fantastic. Everyone just ignores me. That's the 5 minutes up. So I'm afraid this is, if you're online and you're filming this, this is a bit of a nightmare because we just have one microphone. So what I'm going to have to do is to go round and ask everybody to speak into this microphone. Right, the 5 minutes is up. 5 minutes is up. 5 minutes is up. John, you stay there. 5 minutes is up. So, are you able to hear me at the front? Everyone can hear me. So we just have, because of the cuts, we just have one microphone, so we're going to use it. So I'm going to work back. Liz. Fantastic. Liz, so what's the one thing? Keep quiet. Sorry, Liz. That was Dawn being difficult.
Thank you, Dawn. So we've got a very broad brush approach from our table, and I guess we're lucky we're going first. So we really like the NCRI approach. So we'd like that for dementia care research to include all partners. And a new phrase, and key local anchor institutions. Ask Claire Goodman what an anchor institution is. For dissemination and implementation.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Liz. Who's going to, so Ian, again.
So what we've said basically is just a greater focus on implementation. So something to help people navigate that and to identify things that are effective and allow for adoption and spread as rapidly as possible.
Sounds good. Who was the, fantastic.
No, I'll say it.
There we are.
We didn't have time to vote between us, so I'll put all our points into one, okay?
There's always one.
There's always one, yeah. We want a standardised data set, clearly, because we've got John here. But we want to...
Can everyone hear?
Can you hear? Yes. Yep. We want a standardised data set. We want more and better engagement between researchers and everybody who is affected by the research, be that people with dementia carers, staff, etc., and a particular focus on end-of-life care.
Fantastic. It was about 5, that. Who's volunteering here? Yeah.
So on our table, we concluded that unless we fix social care, the best efforts of the people in this room will have limited impact.
So our saying was?
Get social care done.
Well, there were 3 words, one election, so you could do that. Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah. Get social care done.
We think that to do the sort of studies that dementia care needs, given the length of time for which people are living with dementia, that we really need to pay more attention to the career trajectory of researchers so that we can retain those people who start out in dementia care research for their career and offer them ongoing career opportunities.
Thank you very much. And speaking as an early career researcher myself, I agree with that. Who's here? John?
Oh,
yeah.
Come on, wake up. There was no consensus around this table, but an adaptive trial platform, and that was widened to intervention research. That's right.
Was that Rosser's idea this morning, the adaptive trial? Yeah. Yeah.
A very testing day, Alex.
Right, absolutely. We call it the never-ending trial. It just goes on and on. Who's going to volunteer here? All right. Who's going to volunteer? All right. Louise has spoken already. Who's going to volunteer? Yeah, there we are. We'll get a volunteer. Don't.
What the table at the back said. Is that what we? Yeah.
We thought Liz Sampson summed it up really well.
Beautifully. Everyone involved, everyone owning the research and everyone being involved in its implementation.
That's very good. Thank you. Thank you. And here, John.
Well, since we can't say more money, but we need more money, we've framed it as portfolio growth because we do great stuff, but we need to do a lot more. And we need to do that through some of the vehicles that have worked well, like some of the clinical studies groups and portfolio development groups, and that would also bring on the early career researchers, so portfolio growth.
Great. A bit like we don't have a target, we have a quantified ambition. Very good. Yeah, very good. Who agreed here?
So we also said portfolio growth, but to extend into people with dementia living at home who we feel are an under-researched group, and we need to do more research in that cohort, and we need to ensure that the findings of the research are implemented.
Okay. Last word from James.
Yeah, and we've just, thank you for those online. The two main themes that came out there are many people online, so but implementation and career structures were really the dominant themes that seem to have come from our online conversations as well.
Great, thanks very much, James. That's very helpful. Any other kind of reflections? Has anyone been harmed by any subjects brought up today? I always have to say that. Everyone's okay. Fantastic.